The Italy's Uplifting Pagan-Christian Rites. And you're soon going to see why I've called them uplifting, literally uplifting. And we're going to start by talking about a town actually near to Assisi, a little town called San Pellegrino. Before I do, I'd just like to make a brief introduction. I'm going to be giving another talk in 2 weeks. I worked very hard on this one, and I'm taking a break next weekend for a little pause. Again, I want to thank those who've made donations. I appreciate those who will make donations. And this is a return to me for the really fatiguing hours put into these efforts, which I'm enjoying, however. And I mentioned to someone, I'm very glad that this is something permanent I can leave behind when I'm gone. These are now on my YouTube channel, which you may wish to subscribe to. They're on the virtual experiences of my website. And my website, you can see at the bottom, is annsitaly.com. And I have in this first title a photo of the Macchina of Santa Rosa, the machine, literally translated of Santa Rosa, but it's not a machine at all. It is a World Heritage Cultural Intangible. This festa of Santa Rosa in Viterbo on September 3rd, which we're talking about, is one of the UNESCO Cultural Intangible Heritage events of Italy. Italy has over 55 World Heritage Sites. One is, of course, Assisi, the Aeolian Islands, Mount Etna, Venice, Pisa. The list is endless, and has 12 cultural intangibles, events or festivals which you can't put your hands on, but which contribute to the culture, the traditions of Italy, join people together in groups with complete respect to the environment. Some of the UNESCO World Heritage Cultural Intangibles you might be familiar with, not realizing they're World Heritage. One is Neapolitan pizza. One is the lute-making skill of the Cremona violinists. And there is a group chosen or recognized in 2013 called Shoulder-Borne Processional Structures. There are 4 of them. We're going to be talking about 2 tonight. One is in Latium, the region where Rome is. This is its cultural heritage event. The carrying of the shoulder-borne processional structure called the Machine of Santa Rosa. Another is located in southern Italy, in Naples, in the Naples area, in Nola. And we're going to be talking about that as well. But before we get to these 2 UNESCO events, let's talk about Christian pagan rites of Italy, which are not UNESCO recognized, but are fascinating. And they've been fascinating to research, and I hope you'll find them as fascinating as I have found them fascinating. One takes place in a little village called San Pellegrino, which is about 400 people live in San Pellegrino. It's a tiny village in the hills just north of Assisi. It means holy pilgrim. And this event is called Piantar Maggio, the planting of May. You're going to see that all the events we're talking about tonight have Christian pagan rites inextricably linked. So in this little village of San Pellegrino, it's outside the town of Gualdo Tadino, and here we see Gualdo Tadino, nestled into the foothills of the Apennines. It is between Assisi and Gubbio. We'll be talking about Gubbio tonight as well. Near Gualdo Tadino, in San Pellegrino, in this little village, which was not then called San Pellegrino, in the year 1004, there was a walled castle village called Castro Contracense. And one night, April 30th, interestingly, and we're going to see why that's significant, a pilgrim knocked at the city gates. He banged on the city gates. The guard at the top asked him what he wanted. The pilgrim said, "It's cold, it's raining, I need food, I would like hospitality, I've come from Provence." "Where are you going?" asked the gate guard. "I'm on my way to the Benedictine Abbey Church of Monte Cassino, which is south of Naples." The gate guard, with great scorn, said, "Are you crazy? Turn back. It's a foolish trip. and he allowed him no entry. The story is that during the night, the pilgrim left undiscouraged. He was with a young boy who was with him. And during the night, the storm was furious. The daughter of a lord of the town had a prophetic dream. Prophetic dreams are interesting. There'll be one other one in these events that we're talking about. Had a prophetic dream about a cold pilgrim out in the rain under a bridge. A search went out to find him. He was found. He wasn't found at first. What was found under the bridge was his staff, a staff made of poplar. That's interesting. That was a tree very sacred to the Romans for their fertility rites. And we're talking about April 30th. This happened, which is the night before May 1st, which is the month of fecundity and fertility. We're already seeing how things are linked. The staff was standing up straight out of the mud, and the tip of it had flowered. And next to it was his flask, and out of the flask a rose sprouted. The locals knew at once it was a miracle. They sent an oxen-drawn cart to bring his body into the town for proper burial. The oxen wouldn't move. Somebody had the idea of trying 2 calves to haul the cart. The calves hauled the cart, and the people knew it was a miracle. And so word went out about this extraordinary event. This holy pilgrim, without a particular name, was declared a saint about 200 years later. And ever since the year roughly 1000 in commemoration of this pilgrim, yes, every year since 1004, there has been the planting of May, the night of the April 30th, to commemorate this holy pilgrim. What is the planting of May? A huge poplar tree is cut down. It's dragged into the town. Nobody knows the location of the poplar tree except the capo maggiaiolo. These men are called May men. And the capo maggiaiolo will tell his team of other maggiaioli where the tree is after Mass on April 30th. They're all blessed. And then they go out to cut the tree down without the intervention of any mechanical equipment, electrical equipment. They use axes and ropes. They cut 2 trees down. One poplar tree, another poplar tree. The second one will be grafted onto the top of the first one to represent the sprouting out of the top of the staff of the pilgrim. And here you can see them hauling the poplar tree in from the fields. They're going to get it to a setto, a farm cart, which will bring it into town. They're all grunting and shouting together, "Oh, San Pellegrino," as they haul. And it's loaded onto farm carts. It's brought into the center of the village. Look at all the people looking with fascination and great passione evident everywhere in the festivals of Italy, as the poplar trees are hauled into the main square. They're shaved. It's said that the bark is bringing good luck. It's fortuitous. It's propitious. Everybody runs for pieces of bark. The children are getting pieces of bark. They bring them to their grandmothers for good luck. And the tree is, with the help of ladders, raised up. It is now the piantar maggio. It's called il maggio, the planting of May. And this is called il maggio. And you can see the poplar tree at the top has been grafted to the other larger poplar, representing the flowering staff of the holy pilgrim who was refused hospitality in this town, April 30th in 1004. And this has been going on every year since. Pino and I were there one year. It was absolutely astounding. Now, when this is being raised up, there is extreme silence. No one talks. Also because the capo maggiaioli is giving careful instructions to all the men on how to raise it. And then it is raised up. Fireworks go off, and fireworks in ancient cultures or noise were to scare away demons. So here we have again a mixture of pagan and Christian, etc. It's hauled up, and it will stay in the square like a towering sentinel for many months. People will go to the maggio, touch it, kiss it, and it's extremely revered by the townspeople. And not only, people come from all over to see this piantar maggio, to see the maggio. The event of planting it is called piantar maggio. That festival of San Pellegrino has links to the Calende Maggio of Assisi, the celebration of spring. Calende means the first 10 days of the month, because one event of our 3 days of extraordinary festivities is the maypole, which is really the raising up again of a pole in the ground. And I should mention this right now. In the rural areas of Umbria, if a young man says to another young man, "Hey, hai piantato maggio," have you planted May yet? He's obviously making a sexual reference to the young man. It's time to plant May, they say. And this is a reference to the cult of fecundity and fertility, which centers around May. This was the month of the rites to the goddess Flora, the rites to the goddess Bona, the goddesses of fecundity and fertility. So this maypole, this planting of May, and of course the maypole is Nordic too, who you will certainly know if you've been to Sweden. Related to the maypole is the kukania. The kukania is often a greased pole. It's raised up in the center of the square. At the top of the pole are tied, on the left you can see bottles of wine, salamis, sausages, there's a big hunk of parmigiano, a prosciutto, and whoever is going up the kukania is slithering up. It's often greased to make it more difficult. On the right, one man is on the shoulder of others as they're climbing up to the top of this kukania. This is the month of November, actually, in Gubbio, where they celebrate the kukania for the feast of St. Martin, November 11th. The saying, San Martino, castagne e vino, is an Umbria expression, St. Martin, chestnuts and wine, and there's chestnuts up there. The kukania is related to the maypole, also because at the top are foods, and this is abundance. And the goddesses of May, celebrated in May, Flora and Bona, are bringing abundance to the people. This is the goddess Flora, as depicted in a fresco of Pompeii. And the events surrounded by her feast are called the events of La Floralia. And during this time in Rome, she was a very adored goddess. Her temple was near the Circus Maximus. And the festivities of Floralia took place when? Just guess. April 30th to May 3rd. And there were all kinds of dances, orgiastic rites. And there was even an event called, let me just think of the name, Nudatio Momentium, in which enticing young women, often mimes or actresses, strip-teased if the people requested. And this was to inspire sensuality and therefore inspire sexual desires in young men, because we're talking about moments of fecundity, fertility. On the right, you may recognize this beautiful depiction of Flora in the lovely painting in the Uffizi by Botticelli, Birth of Spring. Also related to this fact of the tree as a source of fecundity and fertility is the tree of life, l'albero della vita. On the left, we see an image of dancing around the tree of life. This is from a medieval manuscript. On the right, the tree of life with Christ seated on it. And this is a depiction of an icon, actually. The tree of life, it's said, we learn about the tree of life in the book of Genesis. In the Garden of Eden, there were 2 trees. God suggested that Adam and Eve eat always from the fruit of the tree of life for their guaranteed mortality, but not to touch the tree nearby, which was the tree of knowledge. And the tree of knowledge, the knowledge of what is good, what is evil. Being proud as they were, they also ate fruit of the tree of knowledge. As a result, man no longer has the gift of immortality. And the tree of life is part of ancient Egyptian culture. There it is on a frieze, an ancient Egyptian frieze on the left. On the upper right, it's an Egyptian papyrus. It figures in the art of Sumeria, Mesopotamia. It also figures in ancient Chinese traditions. For the Chinese, the tree of life bore fruit every 300 years. And so lucky was the person who could eat that fruit. For the Egyptians, the tree of life gave birth to the first man and the first woman. Now, this is absolutely extraordinary. Talking about fertility, talking about the wonders of Italy, talking about the tree of life. Look at that beautiful fountain there. This is in the Tuscan coastal town of Massa Marittima. And there's a fresco on the wall there done in 1262 of L'Albero dell'Abbondanza, the tree of abundance, also called the tree of fertility. Now let's get a good look at this tree of fertility. Here's the tree of fertility. It's the same image that you saw on the wall. And now we're just seeing it face on. And a lot of symbolism in this fresco. Frescoes, after all, taught the people. Most couldn't read books at the time, so they're learning from visual images. There's the number 3 recurring again and again in this fresco because this was commissioned by Ildebrando, who was the mayor then of the town, and he was Ghibelline. Ghibellines are those who supported the emperor, whereas Guelphs supported the papacy. And in the medieval hill towns, there were battles always between Guelphs and Ghibellines. Well, this Ghibelline mayor, the Podesta, wants to honor the Ghibellines. So there's the eagle symbol of the Ghibellines. And above the 2 women are 3 eagles. There were 3 tertiaries in this town. And this tree of abundance is going to nourish the tertiaries, give abundance to everybody who lives in the village. And this is really Ildebrando himself honoring himself. And under the 3 eagles are 2 women. They're pulling each other's hair. They're fighting over a basket of fruit. We're going to see what that fruit is in just a minute. But on the right, there's 3 women with their arms linked. Now they're going happily to the water to fill the well, to fill their water jugs. Peace is restored. So the fresco is telling us that under the government of the Ghibellines, abundance, peace, tranquility, and unity will come to this town. Now, what about the fruit that they're fighting over? Fruit up on that tree. Let's have a look at the fruit. Isn't that something extraordinary? You can guess what those are. For those who have doubts, male genitalia growing on the tree. The women were fighting over them. And this is therefore the tree of abundance or the tree of fertility, an artistic treasure of Italy, the small town of Massa Marittima in Tuscany, 1252, roughly, mid-13th century. Gubbio, Corso dei C.E.T, we're going to talk about. Gubbio is one of the most beautiful medieval hill towns of Umbria, and their festival is strongly related to fecundity, fertility, etc. Let's remember the festival we were talking about, the Corso dei C.E.T, takes place in the month of May. Here's the town of Gubbio on a hill. In the foreground, you can see the Roman theater of 100 AD. At the top of the hill, the Basilica of Sant'Ubaldo, where the body of the patron saint of Gubbio is kept in a glass case. It's an uncorrupted body for reasons which have never been explained. He was bishop in the 12th century, and the Festa of Corso dei C.E.T is all about Sant'Ubaldo. What's interesting in this photo is we have the Roman world below, depicted in the theater, and the spiritual world above, depicted in the basilica. So Christian and pagan unite actually in this single photo. The race of the C.E.T, which is in honor of the bishop, Ubaldo, buried at the top, and we're going to see what the C.E.T are in a minute, takes place on May 15th, when these huge wooden structures weighing over 700 pounds are carried on the backs of the teams of 20 men from Gubbio to the basilica on top of the hill. The race takes place in 8 minutes up a gravel dirt road. It's absolutely extraordinary. The race starts at the Palazzo dei Consoli, which you can see just to the right of the theater. And here we have a detail of the beautiful Palazzo dei Consoli. Palazzo dei Consoli was the city hall. The magistrates of Gubbio were called consoli. The magistrates of Assisi in the Middle Ages were called priori, also in Perugia. So priors or consuls are the city councils of these medieval hill towns. This is of the white limestone of the mountains of Umbria, Palazzo dei Consoli. And here we have images of Sant'Ubaldo, patron saint, to whom the festa is dedicated. We see him on the left with the staff of the bishop, and we see him on the right. He's the first one on the top of his cero. We're seeing the C.E.T right here. He's in the yellow cape, yellow mitre, yellow symbol here of gold, nobility. Behind him is San Giorgio. He's the other saint running this race. And behind him is St. Anthony. Now let's talk a bit about the history of this race. It's said that in the mid-12th century, an allegiance of 11 city-states were attacking Gubbio. Ubaldo went out into the countryside. He met with the leaders and arranged a peace, and they left, and leaving the city untouched. Another time, he went out to meet the troops of Frederick Barbarossa in the valley below Gubbio. They had just devastated Spoleto. They turned back after a talk with Ubaldo. And when he came back from his discussion with Frederick Barbarossa, which turned his troops back, the people, it said, picked him up in triumph, carrying through the city, carrying him on their shoulders and thrilled. Well, you know, it's all interesting because number one, 3 C.E.T. Why are there 3? Well, let me tell you what an elderly Eugubino told me very seriously. I said, Ma Signor Pietro, but why are there 3 C.E.T.? If the people just carried Ubaldo through the streets with triumph, why not just have Ubaldo carry? And he said, well, we want to be democratic. So since the Middle Ages, the 3 represent the 3 levels of society. Number 1, the first and most important is Ubaldo, and he represents stonemasons, stone workers, and the common workforce. San Giorgio represents the merchants. St. Anthony represents the farmers, but also the students. Well, that was his explanation of why there's 3 C.E.T. Let's think another way. 3 C.E.T., the Umbrian god of fertility, was called Cerfus. May is the month of celebrations of Cerere and celebrations of the cult of fertility and fecundity once again. And they're all mixed together. This is the race of the C.E.T., the Corsa dei C.E.T., through the city of Gubbio. Ubaldo's team is in the lead, Giorgio, then Antonio. This is a race only in the sense of swiftness. Always up to the basilica. First is Ubaldo. Behind him will be San Giorgio. Then will be St. Anthony. They don't pass each other. It's always Ubaldo first to arrive at his basilica. Who wins the race, however? We're always warned in the Umbrian papers after. We always look to see who won the race. Who won the race? The C.E.T. that stayed erect. We're speaking about the word erection, by the way, and you're going to see more of that in just a minute. That which stays straight and never bends, never leans for the whole race. So erection is very important in a successful race of the C.E.T. The morning starts at 5:30 with the trumpet blowing. The Ceraioli, the teams who are carrying the C.E.T., go to the cemetery where they're going to pay homage to Ceraioli who no longer are with us. If you're a male and you live in Gubbio, you have carried the C.E.T., and so they pay tribute to those who are deceased. Then there's a parade in the morning with bands, with the groups of Ceraioli. This is all a group of San Giorgio supporters, the young children, probably of Ceraioli, who will carry St. Giorgio up the mountain. The man to the left is a Ceraiolo, and he will be carrying St. George. How many on each team? 20 at any one time are going to carry the C.E.T., but there are about 1,000 on each team, 800 to 1,000, because the C.E.T. are so heavy and the race so difficult that people go in and Ceraioli switch places in and out about every 50 yards without ever stopping the race. Here we have bands also in the morning celebration. Each group has their band. This is the band of Sant'Antonio. His color is the black. These are the Capodieci, who are the captains of the team. We've got 2 of the Capodieci here. I don't have a photo of San Giorgio, and San Giorgio is my team. I always cheer San Giorgio because my beloved father's name was Giorgio. By the way, your affection to the C.E.T. depends on your family affection, your father, your mother, what C.E.T. your father carried, your grandfather carried. It does not depend on the section of the town in which you're born. It's an emotional attachment. Now, on the right is the Capodieci of Sant'Ubaldo. He's the leader of his team, and he's holding up the brocca, or the pitcher. It will be filled with water, and the C.E.T. will be baptized before the race starts. And near him are 4 Ceraioli who will run with him. On the left is the Ceraiolo, the captain, Capodieci, the head of the 10, and this is St. Anthony. They all wear their shirts. They wear sashes around their waist, And inside their red neck scarves, there's always a little bunch of fresh May flowers. They're given to them in the morning by young girls at the Church of St. Martin. And all day they sing Questo mazzolin di fiori, the song about this little bunch of flowers. We're in the month of May, aren't we? So flowers and flowering and as we mentioned, floralia, they're all intricately linked also in these festivities. On the left, we see San Giorgiaro with his little boy. Passion starts early when you're an Eugubino or someone from Gubbio. He will soon give his little boy into the arms of the little boy's mother so that he can carry the cero. On the right is a Sant'Ubaldaro with his daughter on his back. She too has a little mazzolin di fiori. Look in her hands, a little bunch of flowers. You can see his mazzolin di fiori hanging out of the knot in his red scarf. There's another Ubaldaro behind him that is a carrier of the cero of Sant'Ubaldo. Even the young people run the ceri, and these are ceri piccoli. Their race is on June 2nd. They run up the mountain. They do everything the big ones do, but the older ones do, but their ceri are much smaller. They're carrying them the morning of May 15th just to be part of the procession. And on May 1st, the ceri are brought down from the basilica. They're kept all year in the basilica, vertically standing next to the glass case which holds the body of Ubaldo. But on May 1st, they're brought into the town, and children ride them. This is the cero of Sant'Antonio, and the children all have on their red jackets that day. It was a rainy day. Sant'Antonio's color is black, but black and red. And look at them carrying the spring flowers as well. They're on their way to City Hall, where the ceri are kept for the month of May. And here they are in City Hall. The 3 ceri, which each weigh over 700 pounds, carved and inlaid. These probably date from about the 18th, 19th century because the ceri are replaced now and then. And at the base of the ceri is the timicchione, it's called. It's a kind of bolt, and you can see it on the right. At the base of the ceri is this bolt. The cero will fit into its stretcher called barella. And there's the 3 barelle. They're on the back against the wall. You can see they have squared off holes in the middle. The bolt at the bottom of the cero will fit into that. And then water will be poured onto it. That's called the baptism. So the wood swells up and there's a snug fit of cero into its stretcher for the race. Now we're up in the main square. It's about 11:30. Excitement is building. Out of City Hall, Palazzo dei Consoli, which we met at the beginning of this discussion of Gubbio. Inside are the 3 ceri, the capodieci, the ceraioli of the various teams, the 3 pitchers, the saints which top the ceri, and suspense is mounting. Suspense is even more intense as the trumpeters play, announcing the beginning of the festivities. People are waving their hands. Behind me as I took this photo, there's hundreds of people packed in. They wave their hands. The waving of the hands represents the flags which would have been waved at these festivals. The banners are waved. These are the banners of medieval banner waving team of Gubbio, which is one of the most famous teams in Italy. They've won prizes for their displays. The door opens and out come the capodieci. Just seeing this, I'm excited. I feel like I'm back there in Gubbio. It's one of my favorite festivals. I have to tell you this, when I became a tour guide in 1997, I was asked to do a guided tour on May 15th. And the people said, I said to them, where would you like to go on May 15th? And they said, well, we'd like a guided tour of Assisi. And I said, well, I'll book you a colleague who can do that tour. I won't be anywhere but Gubbio on May 15th. Coming out of Palazzo dei Consoli in the middle, the capodieci of the St. Ubaldo team in yellow. On his right is St. George. On his left is St. Anthony. Their hands are linked in triumph. Because you see, the race is in honor of Ubaldo. They're not competitors. They're united to worship their patron saint. Out come the ceri, Ubaldo, Sant'Ubaldo's cero, San Giorgio's cero. Look at the force. And just, you can see the passion in the face. I can hear him huffing and puffing as I look at this. Then out comes Sant'Antonio's cero. Then come the 3 pitchers, the Brocche, St. Ubaldo in the middle, Giorgio on the right, St. Anthony on the left. And the Capodiesci have gone over to the side of the square. The barelle are upright. You can see them. They're standing on their barelle. We have Ubaldo in the middle. On his right is George, the Capodiesci of George. On his left is the Capodiesci of Anthony. Look at the people. They're looking at City Hall. The tension is there. I can just feel it looking at them. I can just remember these moments. And out of City Hall come the saints. Ubaldo, on the right, Giorgio, Sant'Antonio on the left. They're going to be taken over to the C.E.T. They're going to be fitted onto the top of the C.E.T. Then there's going to be the baptisms of the C.E.T. and then the alzata, also called the flight of the angels, as the Capodiesci throw themselves down, making the C.E.T. upright. This, everybody, is the greatest collective erection in history. This is May 15th, the month of May, the month of fertility. Cero, it could mean the candlesticks carried in Ubaldo's funeral procession. But Cerfus was the Umbrian god of fertility. And the number 3 is associated with him. 3 rites of divinity, 3 high priests offering sacrifice, 3 city gates to the pre-Roman town of Gubbio. Before the Romans were the Umbri, a native Indo-European Italic people that the Greeks called Umbricos, meaning native indigenous people. So these C.E.T., May 15th, it's all a Christian pagan miscela, mixture, if you will. Now, the objective in the raising up of the C.E.T. is to try to have it so they come up together, one in a row. Actually, this year, Ubaldo's up, Anthony's close behind, Giorgio is a little bit delayed. You can see his ceraioli are also pushing the C.E.T. up. And then they run around the main square how many times? You guessed it, 3. And here comes Ubaldo is first, Giorgio follows, then Sant'Antonio around the square. And then they will leave the square in front of Palazzo dei Consoli, which you see there, and run through the town all morning. And actually, Ubaldo and Giorgio head to the right out of the square. St. Anthony is going to head downhill. And the C.E.T. here is stopped in front of the home of a former ceraiolo who is now too ill to carry the C.E.T. And this is a stop to pay tribute to him. And he's touching his C.E.T. This woman is touching Ubaldo. She's the widow of a ceraiolo who once carried Ubaldo. So there's these stops during the race to pay tribute to people associated with their saint. And here's the race through the streets of Gubbio. You can see the force, also the determination. And this is a stupendous photo actually taken by Steve McCurry. I met him in Gubbio in 2015. You may remember his famous portrait, Afghan Girl with the Green Eyes. He did many photographic masterpieces of the festivals of Umbria, including the C.E.T. Now, what I want to point out here in Steve McCurry's photo is the switching. There are about 1,000 men in each team, 800 to 1,000, because they're switching about every 50 yards. It's exhausting. So if you look at the man in the foreground, he's sort of puffing out air. He's come out, but someone has gone in his place, and the race never stops. Look behind him and look at the first man carrying the C.E.T. He's got the C.E.T. on his shoulder. His arm is around his bracciere, which means his second arm. That bracciere is to support him. That braccieri's hand is pushing on his backbone to hold him up. And then the festivities start with the bands. They play in and out of the restaurants all morning long. People get up and dance with a band. This was last year at the Festa dei C.E.T. And throughout the town, people are offering refreshments. Homes are open to people. Here I am with a friend, Sabrina, in front of her shop. She does beautiful maiolica work. Look, you see the ceramic picture she made. And she is a San Giorgiaro. She's in a passion of San Giorgio. But she's serving drinks to the Sant'Antoniaro because her husband carries the St. Anthony C.E.T. C.E.T, that is. C.E.T plural, C.E.T singular. The bands will serenade under homes. The bands go in and out of homes. They're invited in for lunch and for drinks. On the right, I just came out of a home with the tuba player. I was following the band, and the whole band just sort of dragged me in and come in and have a drink too. And you could see I'm in blue because I'm a San Giorgiato. And on the left, you can see girls all day. People are dancing in the streets with each other. This is Italian passione at its maximum. Then there's a stop for lunch. The Ceraioli go to lunch. While the Ceri are put down in the back streets, people go to them, touch them, kiss them, hold their children up to touch them. And then the procession starts in the afternoon when the statue of Saint Ubaldo is carried through the streets. The Ceri are then lifted up from their stopping points, and they're going through the city of Gubbio. Running around the corner is a very arduous, a very difficult moment. That is a fabulous run around the corner there, because if you look at those three Ceri, no one of the Ceri is tilting. They are all perfectly erect. So Sant'Ubaldo is coming around the corner here, followed by Giorgio, then Anthony. And here again, you see the three Ceri running through the narrow back streets of Gubbio. It's clear that they can't pass each other. They wouldn't anyway. And then they head up the mountain. They're on their way to the Basilica. And they're heading uphill. They run uphill for over 1 kilometer, and they do it in 8 minutes, never longer than 8 minutes. Here comes the Sant'Ubaldari. Down, you can see the beautiful valley below Gubbio. And when you're running up the mountain and running up the hill, the Ceraioli have told me that you switch positions even within 1.5 meters, because you can't carry much more than that in this vertical ascent. Going around the corner, Ubaldo is on his way up, close to the Basilica now. There goes San Giorgio. Here comes St. Anthony again, beautifully erect, all three of the Ceri. Erection is the word of the day. That's what you want on the day of the Festa dei Ceri. Here are excited people waiting for the arrival at the Basilica of St. Ubaldo at the top of the mountain. The race is soon over. They will go inside the Basilica. The door is open. The San Giorgio Cero follows the Sant'Ubaldaro Cero. St. Ubaldo goes in first, and then they shut the door on San Giorgio, and this is all part of the fun. And then the San Giorgiati are outside banging on the door, and they're using horrible swear words, invoking the Lord, the Blessed Virgin, etc. Then San Giorgio gets in, then they slam the door, and St. Anthony, again, the same kinds of offensive language. And I remember that one Eugubina girl that I know very well said, the Sunday before the Ceri at Mass, the priest always says to us, dear fellow Eugubini, let us use more decorous language this year during the Festa dei Ceri. And I said, what happens? And she said, oh, we just look at each other and smile. And then inside the courtyard of the Basilica of Sant'Ubaldo, the Ceri are raised up for the last time. They've come in the door, then they have to be raised up. They run around the courtyard, you can guess, 3 times. And then the Ceri are taken down off their barelle. The saints are taken off the top of the Ceri, and the Ceri are kept for the year in the Basilica. You can see below Palazzo Consoli, this photo is taken from the Basilica. And there are the Ceri in the Basilica. And on the left, we have the altar. And over the altar is the body of Sant'Ubaldo. If you're ever in Gubbio and it's not May 15th, and it's not between May 1st and May 15th, the Ceri are in the Palazzo dei Consoli. By May 15th evening, they're back in the Basilica. You'll want to go up and touch them. And you want to go up and see them and see all the Eugubini up there, touching them and kissing them with great devotion. Another festival of grande passione is the Festa of the Gigli, Festa dei Gigli in Nola, in southern Italy now. We're headed to the region of Campania. This is where Naples is. And we've got a little map here to give you a rough idea of the location of Nola. And now we're going to see one of the festivals of the UNESCO cultural intangibles, the shoulder-borne processional structures. And one of those is the Festa of the Gigli, or the Lilies of Nola. do you know that when the cities united to form to become part of the World Cultural Heritage as shoulder-borne processional structures, Gubbio was asked to join. And Gubbio said, we are going to make an attempt to enter ourselves, to be alone. And Gubbio is still trying. They applied in 2012. They're not yet successful in being accepted. Whereas the other 4 cities which united are now World Heritage, Cultural, and Tangible UNESCO sites. That is Nola, Viterbo, Santa Rosa, which we'll learn about. And then there are 2 festivals. One is in Calabria, Palmi, and one is in Sardinia, Sassari. And those are shoulder-borne processional structure festivities. Here are the Gigli of Nola. Amazing structures, over 30 meters high. So we're talking of over 100 feet. They're done in wood and also paper mache. And they're standing to the right and left of the Duomo. And there are 4 Gigli. We'll talk about their significance. And there is another structure, which is the boat, the barca. There's another image of the barca. And this is a festival, and here too, we have a Giglio, and on the left, one of the other Gigli called La Barca. Now the question is, what are the Gigli? And maybe someday you can be Nolano per un giorno, as Pino and I were. Be someone from Nola for one day. It was one of the most extraordinary days of our life. The feast day is June 22nd, very close to the summer solstice. So we're back into pagan Christian again. It celebrates the bishop San Paolino, and there he is. And the silver reliquary is also carried in procession. Behind him are 4 of the Gigli, lilies. It is said that when Nola was devastated by the Goths, barbarians, people with beards, barba, from the north, the Goths were probably from present-day Sweden. They devastated Nola, and it was San Paolino who was taken off a captive. We don't know where. They either took him to Africa or Turkey. We're not going to know for sure because San Paolino himself is probably a legendary figure. And he was taken away with 28 Nolani prisoners. But when they learned that he'd been a bishop, they brought him back to the city of Nola. He came on one of these boats, the barca, because Nola at the time, part of it extended to the seaside. So this is the barca, also represented on the day of the Festa dei C.E.T. What do the other 7 C.E.T represent, or 8 C.E.T, excuse me? They represent the medieval guilds, because it said when he arrived at the port, the members of the heads of the medieval guilds went to greet him, bringing bunches of lilies and bringing bunches of fruit and vegetables and carrying huge candles in procession. And the medieval guilds, and I don't know if I remember them all, but I think I might. The medieval guilds are, one is the farmer and vegetable growers, the butcher, the pig butcher, the tailor, the cobbler, the innkeeper. Then there's a couple others that I wrote down somewhere, but I can't remember their names. But anyway, the 8 confraternity members. And they greeted him and brought him to the town in great festivity. Now, this is the day of the Festa of the C.E.T, and this gentleman is touching the reliquary of San Paolino in the church dedicated to him. And he told me, I'll always be grateful to him. I was in a car accident and he saved my life. Italians must touch to express their devotion. 2 little boys here praying before a statue of San Paolino. And here we see the Gigli in the square before the procession will start, with also the reliquary, the silver reliquary, which has been carried out of the Duomo and will lead the procession, the image of San Paolo, and then he'll be followed by his Gigli. By the way, Gigli, and there he is, his image is on the Gigli. You can see him on the one on the left and the one on the right. Giglio, the lily. But there is a theory that the Festa of the Gigli is actually a corruption of the medieval word in the Neapolitan dialect of grain of wheat, ciglio. This all works. It's June 22nd. It's the time of the summer solstice. It's a time of the unification of earth and heavens. It's a time when flaming torches were carried in the streets by the Romans, and there was a celebration of the goodness of the earth, pagan and Christian. One of our most significant days during our 2 or 3 days in Nola was a guided walk, volunteer, with a young woman named Julia. She's taken us on a walk to see all the 8 Gigli, which are placed in the different squares before the procession starts. And she's indicating here to Pino the story of San Paolino. Here we are with Julia before one of the Gigli. Our other fabulous guide was Gianni, who is the friend of our nephew. It's thanks to Johnny that we had the extraordinary experience of making this cultural intangible tangible to us. Thank you so much, Johnny. He's a young engineer from Nola. And as he said, the passion is so great that when he was, the year he worked in Chicago as an engineer, his vacation time had to rotate around June 22nd because he had to be home for the carrying of the Gigli. And here Julia and Pino are walking through one of the piazzas where the tables are set out for the evening dinners, which take place throughout the city, throughout Nola for 2 or 3 nights. And these dinners are also to collect funds, because you can imagine the financing of this festival has its price, and the creation of these Gigli. Here was one night a dinner that Johnny and his friends put on together. They all had shirts. You create groups at times, and we joined them for one of their festival dinners. This is the night before the carrying of the Gigli. One of his friends is taking a selfie here. Oh, excuse me. And then we walked around the town, dancing around the Gigli all night, music playing, the songs sung, variation of songs, Neapolitan music, and original pieces written for this Festa dei Gigli. And this is one of the back streets. The dinner is going on. There's one of the Gigli. This is a photo that Johnny took. This is a group of his friends, and they're sitting, as you can see, on the Giglio of the Barca. And there is a judgment to the contest. The judgment is on, but the prize is a friendly prize, nothing to be terribly coveted, but it's an honor. There are prizes for the best music of your Giglio, the construction and decoration, and how erect your Giglis were as they ran through the streets of Nola. Then the day of the festival, everywhere, euphoria, passione. Wherever you are, people are giving you horns and whistles to blow, asking you to join them in dancing and song. These are just some young people that I met at one of the back streets who wanted to have their picture taken with a visitor who wasn't a Nolana, and that's me. I wasn't a Nolana. This little guy later gave me one of his whistles, blowing his horns. This was near another Giglio in one of the piazzas. And now we're close to the procession time. You can see people on the rooftops looking at the Gigli. Now these Gigli are mounted on structures, wooden structures, and they're carried by teams of men. There'll be 100 carrying them. They're called culatori, or cradlers, because this is what you're not going to believe. As they carry, they're cradling it. Commands are given by the head of their paranza. The group is called a paranza. A destra, sinistra, and up and down. And on the top, they are dancing. People are dancing and people are playing music. And the Giglio itself is being lifted up and down, swayed back and forth according to the commands of the captain of the paranza. It's absolutely extraordinary. It's not to be believed. Also not to be believed is the seeing these people with these calluses on their shoulder. They're very proud to show their calluses. These calluses come from years of carrying the Gigli. This is a photo taken from the Giglio looking down at the Paranza, the group of men carrying, the 100 men carrying. And you can see here on the left and right, I wish I could have shown you videos actually. While the bands are playing on top, the men under it, who are the Paranza, they're moving back and forth, and these gigli are dancing. There's the band, you can see. And here's some young people on the right, the giglio behind with the musicians all around it. And now we see the gigli coming through the side streets. There's San Paolino on the left on his giglio, and you can see how narrow the streets are. How tall are the gigli? They're over 30 meters times 3. They're over 100 feet tall. And this photo on the right is quite interesting because it's taken from the top of the giglio looking down, and you can see the Paranza, the 100 men carrying the giglio. Coming through the back streets, and this was in front of the Duomo the year we were there, the pride of Nolano, Orgoglio Nolano. That is what this fest is all about, Nola's extraordinary pride and passion, as is the last festival we'll talk about of the shoulder-borne shoulder-borne structures in procession is La Macchina di Santa Rosa, Viterbo. Macchina, not in the sense of machine, but in the sense of huge structure. Viterbo is in Latium, as you can see. It's west of Umbria. It's close to the Mediterranean Sea. A lovely medieval hill town. It was a papal city with a papal palace here in the mid-14th century. Things were rough in Rome. Bellicose attacks on the papal states. The papacy transferred for about half a century, mid-14th century, to the city of Viterbo. This becomes a papal city. And on September 3rd, there's a celebration of their patron saint, Santa Rosa, with the Macchina di Santa Rosa. The Macchina di Santa Rosa is carried on the backs of a team of men. In Nola, they were called culatori. In Viterbo, they're called facchini. Facchino, the word you may know, means a porter. It actually means somebody who carries a weight. And here we see one of the structures. This is the night of September 3rd, celebrating Santa Rosa. Now, Santa Rosa was born in Viterbo. She was born in the 13th century, and she was a very pious young girl who died at the age of 17. She was very outspoken as well, and she preached out in the streets about the need to align with the papacy, support the papacy, and defy Ghibelline authority. So her family was temporarily ostracized from Viterbo. When she returned to Viterbo, her hopes were to become a Franciscan. She was very, very attached to San Francesco of Assisi, but ill health prevented it. She became a Franciscan tertiary. So this feast is in her honor. On September 4th, in the mid-13th century, her body was carried into a church, which later will become the Sanctuary of Santa Rosa. The bishop on her feast day, this is the afternoon before, September 2nd is the afternoon before the feast, before the carrying of the Macchina. He's blessing all the people. And he's just come out of the sanctuary to Santa Rosa. Inside is her heart kept in a reliquary and her body as well. And then the afternoon of September 2nd, this is the day before September 3rd, when the macchine are carried on the shoulders. The facchini, and you can see them here, very proudly stand near the reliquary containing her heart. And it's going to be carried through the streets of Viterbo. It said the carrying of her heart brings well-being, health, abundance to the city of Viterbo. Again, this association with the same things the goddesses did for people. They wear white for the purity of Santa Rosa and red for the cardinals who carried her body when it was transferred from a parish church, her own parish church, to the convent of the Franciscans. And that was in 1258 on September 4th. Here are 3 of the facchini. The one in the middle is Luigi. We had a nice talk, and I later talked to Luigi's mother and said, are you worried about him carrying that huge structure on his back? And she smiled and she said, no, I know Santa Rosa will protect him. And they're about to lift up the reliquary. You can see it there, which has in it Santa Rosa's heart. In front of the church are young facchini. They hope they'll carry someday. The young facchini are called boccioli, rosebuds. And here they are, the little rosebuds. In front of the sanctuary of Santa Rosa, you can see the beautiful tapestry hanging over the door with the roses. The bands play for the afternoon procession, and out of the church comes the reliquary. The bishop is leading. The bishop blesses all the people. You can see people in Renaissance dress in front of us, and they will be in the procession as well. And they are carrying the reliquary around to 7 churches of Viterbo. Bands are playing, leading the festival. The facchini will follow. You can see them there. How do you become a facchino? You do a challenge. You must carry 150 kilos, which is over 300 pounds, on an ellipsis form of 90 meters in a church. If you can do that, you're a facchino. There are honors recently to a man who's carried the facchino 40 times. In the procession, there are the rosine, and they're the little girls dressed to look like Santa Rosa herself, who died at the age, she wasn't quite 18. The trumpets blare, the facchini follow, linked arms linked, and the little ones, the boccioli, with their arms linked as well, just like their fathers, their grandfathers. And this heart is carried to 7 different churches. And roses are carried as well to all the churches on the route. And those wreaths there will be brought to the cemetery to remember past facchini. This is the evening, and now we're at the end. We're about to carry Santa Rosa. Before they carry the macchina of Santa Rosa, they're in the church. The bishop is giving them the blessing. The blessing is called articulo mortis, and it is a blessing which is to protect them in case of danger, and it means that in case of death, if you can imagine this, they have a plenary indulgence. So they're all receiving the blessing called articulo mortis, and then they will go outside, follow the trumpet players, the banner wavers of Viterbo, and head to the macchina of Santa Rosa, this huge, beautiful obelisk. It seems like an illuminated bell tower. It's made of steel. It's made of aluminum. It's made also with as many as 1,200 embroidered roses on it. There were 9 angels on this one. They're kneeling before it, and they're asking for the blessing of Santa Rosa. And I want to see if I've got here the exact words that they will say. They will say this. There's the head of the facchino, the capo facchino, and he will say, before they leave that church, after the blessing, he'll shout, "Siamo tutti dello stesso sentimento." Do we all have the same emotion? And everybody shouts yes. And the people outside are shouting yes. And they're waving handkerchiefs, and it's absolutely extraordinary. And then they get to the macchina. They're going to lift it up, and he gives the commands. His first command is, "Ciuffi su tutti." Everybody puts on their skull cap. The caps have leather bands on the back to protect their necks. And then he says, "Alzate," raise them up. First he says, "Sollevate fermi," raise up and stay still. And then he says, "Per Santa Rosa, avanti." For Saint Rose, move forward. And they do. They're getting the commands now. And they're going to carry this over 1 kilometer. And this weighs, I believe this, yes, this weighs over 5 tons. And it's carried by 100 men called the facchini. And it's absolutely an extraordinary festival. It's a cultural intangible. And I hope the cultural intangibles tonight it's tonight for me, have become for you something tangible. And may we meet at least one day, if not in Viterbo on September 3rd for the Festa of Santa Rosa, or in Nola on June 22nd for the Festa of the Gigli. Hopefully, at least in Gubbio, you will be able to come with me one year for the astounding Corsa dei Ceri on May 15th. And you can see here my website, as well as the website of the apartments that we rent behind our house. I'm happy now that we have Italians staying in both apartments. We have a family staying there for a month in one apartment, and a couple from Lombardy in northern Italy staying for another month. And we hope soon that we'll have American, Australian, Canadian visitors as well. So stay well. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing the word. Thank you for donations. And this lecture should be up on my YouTube channel and the virtual experiences page of my website within a couple days. And now we're going to, and the next lecture I'd mentioned to some people will not be next Saturday. I'm taking a little break, a little rest, a little bit of recovery for the hard work of the past lectures, and we'll meet again in 2 weeks. And now we're going to unmute you, and I'm happy to take questions and any comments. Okay? Oh, we have a question, Jane. Are we unmuting now? Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, David.
Huh? Hey, Annie, question.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just blown away by the way these traditions are passed down, and the young kids, the pictures you have of them and their fathers and their grandfathers. Is there is this truly a whole community type thing, or do these kids ever get bullied or anything because they're doing this? Is this a very proud moment for all these towns, or the way kids are now these days, they can be such jerks. But the ones you're showing, they obviously they're all happy to do it. Are they a minority, or is that pretty?
No. I really think that in Gubbio, I can't tell you. I've talked to a couple people on the phone from Gubbio. Heartbroken this year that due to COVID-19 they couldn't carry their Ceri. And a group of young people gathered together in the main square in front of Palazzo dei Consoli on May 15th, and they were not respecting social distance. They weren't fined, but all of them had to have the tamponi, the test to make sure that when you put that on your tongue, the tampon, yeah. Right. Yeah. They all had to be tested. They were severely reprimanded. There were not other, measures taken, but it was devastating for them not to have the Ceri run. And so they met in front of Palazzo dei Consoli. And you know what they're doing in San Pellegrino, what they did this year on April 30th? They couldn't run the pioppo, the piantarmaggio, the huge poplar tree. People put in vases in front of their house cuttings of poplar branches. It's passion, and it's felt.
That's great. Great.
It's felt. And if you're in Gubbio, you will carry the Ceri. It's only been 3 times in history that they didn't run the Ceri. It was 2 times in World War I, once in World War II. And there was one time 100 years ago when the Ceri could be run for a war, a plague or something, of 200 years ago. Women picked up the Ceri up in the basilica and ran them around 3 times inside the basilica.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's great. That was terrific.
It's passion.
That was just terrific.
Can you spell the place that this is located? Which place? But which place, Barbara? Nola is Southern Italy, N-O-L-A. Gubbio is G-U-B-B-I. I can type this for you. Let's see. We've got Gubbio, Nola.
How do you spell the town where the fountain is with the the three women, the women fighting over the
Oh, that's Masa Maritima, the tree of fertility. I'll write that.
Yes, please.
On the Tuscan coast. Isn't that the most bizarre thing you've ever seen?
Yes.
How'd you like the fruit on that tree? On the tree of life, yeah. Yeah, it's the main water fountain in the fresco is mid 13th century, I think 1265. We don't know who did the fresco. And it was interesting that on the tree off to the left, they think they can see the head of a serpent, but they're not sure. So they can't yet define it as a tree of life. But if there was a serpent, it's probably related to the whole Genesis story of the tree of life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Gubbio was a highlight of our family trip to good. But thanks to Dave Court, we met on in Pino. We've all treasured the pottery we bought in Gubbio. Thank you. Joe Rosenberg. Thank you very much, Joe. Yeah, they have beautiful ceramics in Gubbio, don't they? Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you all came. So did you realize there were such pagan Christian links in this country? I guess you did. But
What town is the location?
what town is located where? I can't see that question.
I don't know.
What town is located in Barbara?
The one you told this.
Massa Marittima is the town. And the fountain is in Massa Marittima. And it's a water fountain, a well. No, it's a city water fountain. It's a huge Gothic vaulted structure, and that's on the wall. Oh, and I have to tell you this about Gubbio, for those who are still here. One time I was having dinner with a girl from Gubbio, and we were talking about the C.E.T and the Passioni, and she said, you know, a friend of my father's said to me last year, she was about 26, and she said to me, Patrizia, you're never going to understand the C.E.T unless you carry the C.E.T. And she said, I can't carry the C.E.T because I'm a girl. The little C.E.T piccoli are carried by girls. And then there's the teenage C.E.T, and they're carried May 30th. And the teenagers do everything their fathers do. And there still can't be girls because of the weight. There only can be females in the C.E.T piccoli. And so she said to her father's friend, I can't carry the C.E.T. And he said, you can be my bracciere for about a foot. My arm. You know, he's carrying at the C.E.T's here, and he's got his bracciere who's holding up his back. And she thought about it and thought about it. It was the day of the C.E.T, and he said, you know, I'll count on you. You can be at this fountain. And then she just thought, I'm going to do it. And she went in for 1 foot, and she put her arm around her father's friend, and she was his bracciere, his support for a foot. And she said, Anna, now I understand the C.E.T. And so I told Pino, someday before I die, I've got to carry the C.E.T at least 6 inches. I can't help feeling that in the U.S. we are so independent that we are missing the wonderful sense of community that festivals such as these create. Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, yes. The other thing that we have in the U.S. is this. We have mobility. So I'm speaking of myself. I was born in Massachusetts. My father had a job transfer when I was 6. I grew up in Wisconsin. From 7th grade to freshman year, we lived in LA, another job transfer from my father. Then we went back to Wisconsin. Then I went to Santa Clara for university. What is my focal point in the U.S.? I don't know.
Yeah.
In Italy, you're born, you live, you grow up for the most part in the town where you're born. Because we must remember, and we've said this in the past lecture, that a huge percentage of Italian economy is based on small to medium-sized run family businesses. And then as Johnny said, who taught us about Nola, he's Nolano, but I told you when he was working as an engineer in Chicago, he took the job knowing he could be back June 22nd in Nola. He said, I can't be anywhere in the world except in Nola. I said, what's it like for you this year? He said, it's a heartbreak. Yeah, because of COVID-19, they can't gather. Thank you. I'm glad. An ultimate cultural experience. Gubbio is Celia, thank you. Yes, Celia and Gino were here. And Celia, you were in one of my photos. You were near the Cherry Peak.
I saw it.
Did you see it?
I saw it. Yeah.
What is my talk on in 2 weeks? I don't know. I'm debating a couple. I have a couple ideas. I think one, and it might be that, is the Mediterranean diet as world cultural and heritage. There's so much to say about the Mediterranean diet.
There is.
Oh, that'd be great, Anna.
So much recipes, food related. I already have thousands of photos. Wherever I go, I'm taking photos of foods. Taking the funicular up to the top of Gubbio. Yes.
Oh, God.
You can take the funicular. What's amazing is this. This was written by Dave Court. What's amazing, Dave, is that on the day of the Cherry, there is the funicular that takes you up, but it's amazing to see how many people are going to walk up. I'm talking about uphill for nearly a kilometer on a dirt road, 85-year-old women with canes. Fathers pushing wheelchairs with children in them. Mothers carrying babies on their backs. It's absolutely extraordinary. You give up on the funicular because there's too long a line, because the funiculars carry 3 people at a time. And if you want to be, and I have to tell you this for those who are still here. One time, this is what I always did for the Festa dei Cherry, and Celia and Gino might know because they were in it with me. I would always do a tour in Gubbio, and we'd see the raising up of the Cherry, and then we'd have lunch, and we'd dance in the afternoon with the people, and then my tour group would generally go back to Assisi around 4 o'clock in a bus. And then Pino would come up around 6, and we would do the run up the hill in the evening. Well, going up the hill one evening, I got separated from Pino, and I got up to the basilica, and I got in it before they closed the door. And I got in it, and they lowered the Sant'Ubaldo Cero. Sant'Ubaldo came in it, and some young man came up to me, and he shoved me against a wall. He put his hands on the wall like this. And he said, Signora, non so quello che fai qui, ma non ti spostare. Madam, I don't know what you're doing here, but don't move. And it was so exciting because I was in the courtyard when they raised the 3 Cherry up again, and they're all shouting, Viva Ubaldo, and then running around. And it was just, it wasn't carrying the Cherry, but it was pretty close to getting into the Passione. It was amazing. Celia, Celia was with me, and Gino. Wasn't that incredible, Celia?
Oh, it was fantastic, Annie. Just absolutely experience of a lifetime.
It is an experience.
It was wonderful.
And some people now, if I say, let's go to the Che, they say, well, you saw the crowds. They said, oh, the crowds. But as Celia knows, we're in the right place at the right time, remember?
Oh yeah, it was fine.
Stairs, we could see everything.
Yeah, it was great. It was just great.
So put it on your list for 2021. Gubbio, maybe. Can't wait to be with you in April. Linda!
Ciao.
April. Ciao.
Yeah, I keep fingers crossed that they let us in by April. I will be bereft if we can't go.
Linda's bringing a group.
Yeah. And you see Sulmona behind me. I mean, all the festivals in Sulmona were canceled this year too.
Yeah.
The crazy snake festival in Coculo, and the running of the Madonna and all. It's all gone. It's heartbreaking.
They're all pagan too.
I don't know how to write anything.
Does anybody else have a question? Oh, Sandy, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you still there? Well, she wrote something anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure at some point you'll do Calan di Maggio.
Well, I was going to do the 3 festivals of Umbria, Calan di Maggio, Gubbio, and the Infiorate. And they were one lecture, and then I broke them up and put the Infiorate into the floral one. and then I did Gubbio into this one of pagan and fertility, fertility and Christianity and everything. Calendimaggio could certainly be its own talk, actually, because there's so much to say about it. For everybody else, that's our medieval festival, the first days of May. So, I know.
And Annie, this was incredible. This was just incredible. Thank you.
Who's that?
When you do the Mediterranean food, could you possibly do something about the pressing of the olive oil?
Well, that would be in it. But
yes.
Who just said that?
Carol.
This is the dilemma, because it's either going to be Mediterranean diet, probably as world cultural heritage. Even it's in art too. The Mediterranean diet, it's in frescoes of Pompeii. There's so much to say.
Oh,
about
sure.
bread,
Right.
eggs, fish. I mean, it's endless. If you get into
It's
Mediterranean
multiple.
diet and include art, it's a real problem. I'm going to have to decide if I'm going to include it or not. The other one that I mentioned I have to do is the cheese please one, because it'll be Pinot making goat cheese recipes, cheese festivals. There's so many subjects that can turn into Zoom talks.
Yeah, part 1, 2 through 20 on the food.
1 through 20, more food ones? Who votes for food?
Always,
Sure.
always food and wine.
And gelato.
And I've been asked to do one on the Basilica of St. Francis too, and that's a whole other, let's see.
Oh, boy. That'd be a whole hour.
Once
Julia liked it. Thank you, Julia. Go ahead.
once COVID's over, we'll still be sitting here in front of the screens,
You think
listening
so?
to wonderful talks.
You think so? Sandy, I
Well-
love doing the talks, but I love doing it, but doing these talks this week, I didn't get out to pick wild field greens, go say hi to the goats or anything, because so much of my concentration has to be on this, which is why there's a break now. This
Well, I hope everybody's donating, so it's worth your time. You know what I
week. Thank
mean?
you. We'll keep our fingers crossed. People have been.
Here, Jared, come in and say hi.
Hi, Jerry. Ciao. Thank you. Thank you.
Baci, baci, baci.
Buonanotte. Ciao.
Buonanotte.
I look forward to hearing about the Mediterranean diet. Yeah, that could be a good one. Okay. Thank you. And thank you for sharing the news, please, generously. When you get the newsletter, blast it around and bother people with it, okay?
Are you on Facebook?
I am on Facebook. Yes.
Okay.
And I don't post on Instagram. I should. I'm on Twitter too. I haven't done anything recently. I haven't done anything on my blog in 2 weeks because I'm working on the Zoom lecture this week.
I don't see how you do it all.
Well,
It's beautiful.
a little dash of espresso now and then. Sharon Marsh, yes to food, risotto recipe. Okay. I can give you a risotto recipe. Just write me, Sharon. One of my favorite pictures with you and Judy, Bob. I came to in late. Did you talk about the festa di Sant'Antonio in Isola Fossata? No, I didn't talk about the festa of Sant'Antonio in Isola Fossata because I have never been there. But it intrigues. Next time. Thank you. Oh. Pardon?
Thank you very much for the comment.
And thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And I'm going to say buonasera and grazie.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Annie.
Grazie mille. Arrivederci.
Prossima volta.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.